Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Bassi. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers out there. I begin with oil, of course. Oil is edging towards a one-month high. I mean, it's everything we've been talking about. Tariff fears, geopolitical concerns, the supply-demand dynamics, non-oil producers like Canada, the U.S., Brazil, they're all pumping more oil. April is next month. We're expecting we'll see if OPEC Plus follows through on adding more barrels of oil to the market. Remember, there was that 2.2 million barrel per day voluntary cut to try to support prices. So, we'll see how that goes. Gold, Dr. Bassi likes to talk about gold a lot. 3,089 this morning, another high. And in fact, Goldman Sachs now has a projection that gold is going to hit 3,300 by the end of 2025. Now, why is this happening? Because gold is seen as a safe haven asset. When there is turmoil across the world, investors usually pull their money out they cycle out of other securities and they just put it into gold and say, let me just keep it right there. And so if you invested in gold by the beginning of the year, you're smiling right now. Of course, it's volatile, so you got to be careful with that. So that's what Goldman Sachs says by the end of 2025. We'll be tracking and see whether that comes to fruition. Asian markets mixed, well, in fact, it's pretty much bearish. China, Hong Kong, Japan. In fact, Japan was and Korea leading losses this morning. The Nifty 55, when last one we checked, when we were putting this together, it was actually negative. It just flipped positive, so it was really volatile. ASX over in Australia. Again, it's tariff fears and the like. In fact, I remember we talked about automobiles. We should have done this for the US, Asia, and Europe, but there are just so many stocks. So just for Europe, look at auto stocks this morning. Toyota down 4.4%, Honda down 4.3%, Nissan down 1.4%, Mazda down 3%, Mitsubishi down 1.15%, Kia, Mercedes in Europe down over 2%, BMW down almost 3%. Who else? Stellantis was down yesterday, Ford, GM, so auto stocks across the globe all falling. Xi Jinping held a meeting with global executives earlier this morning, about 40 of them. Blackstone was there, FedEx, who else? I mean, a number of companies, global executives. He was, pushing, saying that, look, come and invest in China. China is where you should be. He also said they should maintain the global order. I think he was trying to suggest that the issues with what's going on with tariffs are not good for everyone, and they should try and, I guess, put pressure on Trump if they can. There's an excerpt of a translation from what he said. He says, to invest in China is to invest in tomorrow. We need to work for the stability of global supply chains. And essentially, if you think about how China used to crack down on businesses now because of the need for them to try and get to their 5% GDP growth and not being able to just depend on exports, they have to also look at consumption and also investment. Xi Jinping, this is his second meeting with global executives in the span of a month. So it really shows you the pressure on China. Speaking of global supply chains, Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada, has said that the old relationship between Canada and the U.S. is over and that Canada now has to look at other countries in order to build relationships and not depend on the United States. Here he is.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over. What exactly the United States does next is unclear. But what is clear is that we, as Canadians, have agency. We have power. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. We can control our destiny. We can give ourselves much more than any foreign government, including the United States, can ever take away. We can deal with this crisis best by building our strength right here at home. It will take hard work. It will take steady and focused determination from governments, from businesses, from labor, from Canadians. We will need to dramatically reduce our reliance on the United States. We will need to pivot our trade relationships elsewhere. And we will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
Another very interesting discussion that's been going on, and that is the compounding nature of tariffs. President Trump is not only putting tariffs on finished goods, like finished goods like cars. he's also putting tariffs on the raw materials that go into those finished goods. So it's a compounding situation. So this is Lana Payne. Lana Payne is the president of Unifor, which is a big union in Canada. And she talked about the compounding nature of tariffs and how that just adds up to prices. But also said this, that the unions will fight against any Canadian companies that try to appease Trump and move their supply chains or move production over to the US. Because the opportunity cost of doing that to appease Trump is a loss of Canadian jobs. And it's not just for Canada. This is for any other country that is trying to do negotiations, India, whoever. Yeah, in fact, by the way, even doing that in the short term is very difficult and very expensive because it takes a lot of time for these supply chains to be built. So, great point that she made, and here she is.
All of the tariffs right now in terms of what we're facing, because you have to realize it's compounding tariffs on the auto industry. We use steel and aluminum to build cars. There's a tariff on that. There's a tariff that will be on finished vehicles from what we understand, and the parts, the Canadian parts that are in that vehicle will be tariffed. So what will this mean? Does it mean that we end up losing production or shifts that will be done in the United States as a result of it? Will smaller auto parts companies be able to withstand that? How will this get charged out across the industry? What impact will it have on the full supply chain? I don't know yet. But what I can tell you is that none of this is good for Canadian jobs and Canadian workers right now. And how long will these companies be able to withstand, what could be a very hefty tariff on every car that they build in this country? And what decisions will they think that they can make in order to avoid that? And that's going to be where the rubber hits the road, and why we've been very clear to the companies and to the government and to anyone who's willing to listen to us that you do not get to shift production out of this country to appease Donald Trump and put Canadian auto workers out of work. That will not happen, not on our watch, and not without a damn fight.
It's not going to happen on our watch. You're not going to just move production across and lose Canadian jobs. Finally, Nigeria. So something happened yesterday. Someone at the NNPC jumped the gun and put out a press release stating that the NNPC is ready for an initial public offering. Now, they deleted the tweets and took it down, but it already happened. So it's everywhere, and people have been asking me what's going on. The Chief Finance and Investor Relations Officer was quoted after a meeting that took place in NNPC Towers on Thursday. And this is not, it's not like it's anything new. This is basically the Petroleum Industry Act, which actually has a provision for the NNPC to one day list on the Nigerian stock exchange. Essentially, the press release says that they're talking to a number of partners and they are looking at, getting, the foundation ready for an IPO, which again is an initial public offering. So they did take it down apparently. So I think it looks like they're going to give further details, but it's already everywhere. Everyone's been reporting it. I've been asked about it. What are the benefits of this? This essentially means that Nigerians would be able to buy into the NNPC. And I think it's very interesting that with the conversations we're having about initial public offerings within this administration, you could possibly have NNPC listing, the Dangote refinery possibly listing, and Flutterwave. These are the conversations that I've had, which would be pretty huge. So we'll look for further clarification from the NNPC on that regard.
Excellent. When the news broke, Mr. Burson, one of our business correspondents, business anchors, had said that if they're going to file, then they ought to have been registered, done their due diligence with SEC and NGX, which that press release didn't quite detail.
Right.
And so perhaps that's why I believe it's a communication gap. It's great to know or to preempt that NNPC is going to be listing on the Nigerian exchange, and it's fantastic news. We've been calling for this in the spirit of transparency, opening more of the books, getting more people involved, and just having that. It's now a limited company, and it also have been done since. Like you talked about, the PIA makes provisions for this as well. So that's really great. Looking forward to that press release being reintroduced. But on Trump, I love Marcani's stance on this, and beyond the business side of it is also the political side of it.
You're wearing Canadian red, by the way.
Don't forget, he has an election to win come April 28th.
Yeah.
And one of the things that voters are going to be looking at is the kind of president that can stand up to Trump.
Yeah.
And that is what he's doing, he's talking tough. James Moore, who was the former Minister of Industry, had written about this, talking about advice to incoming leaders as to how Canada can strengthen its internal trade and not depend on America. One of the things they talked about was premiers having more cohesive working amongst the premiers, ensuring that they're able to take away bottlenecks that affect trade within Canada. Honestly, I don't know how Canada is going to survive without trade with America.
Exactly.
Currently, $3.6 billion daily as at 2023 was the trade numbers between both countries. They work with each other.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they're not willing to be bullied by these Trump tariffs, but also looking at ways to strengthen their own economy and strengthening internal trade.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing about North America is this U.S., Canada, Mexico agreement, which will be renegotiated this year. And so that's why there's great turmoil in North America because of the tariffs being imposed on automobiles and other imports from either Canada, Mexico, or any other part of the world. Canada imports 8 million, on average, cars into the United States. So it's an attack on the Canadian economy. And what McCartney was saying is that this is a direct attack. And he also says that the Canada-U.S. Automotive Agreement of 1965 is the most important major milestone in his lifetime. And this is all finished because of Trump's efforts. But the Canadians must take control of the Canadian economy. Now, he was having a cabinet meeting. He had a press conference immediately after. And at that press conference, the major revelation is that he says he has been contacted by the Americans and there's likely to be a phone call conversation between him and President Trump, either today or tomorrow. We don't know what the details of that will be. But the interesting thing is that Trump's tariffs have become the major issue in the Canadian election. Poilievre, who is leading the Conservative Party, is talking about it. Singh, who is also leading one of the parties, the NDP, I think, is also talking about it. In fact, Singh yesterday visited an automotive site. Yeah. So all of them are piggybacking on that. But we'll see what happens on the 28th of April. Yep. But it is clear that the Liberal Party of the Prime Minister has been given an advantage. Indeed. And that's why he's harping on Trump. Yeah, yeah. Now, as for oil, I think the two major issues are, one, the ban on Venezuela, the sanctions on Iran, in fact, three, and then the tariffs on, auto parts. Yeah. We don't know for how long the gains would be sustained because Brent crude went down 0.1%. WTI also went down 0.1%. Yeah. Other countries are reacting. Germany says it's not going to give in. France says Trump has made a mistake, and it is an incoherent mistake. But China is meeting with business chiefs from everywhere. It's not talking about full retaliation yet. China is taking a cautious approach while making new friends across South Asia. But the meeting of about 40 chief executives in business yesterday, Tesla CEO Elon Musk was conspicuously absent. Anyway, thank you very much.